I'm Kimberly Jentzen, and I'm excited today to bring you a man that I respect and admire. I've been at his festival several times. He is the founder of Louisville's International Festival of Film, and he also was governor of the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences of the Performance Peer Group. I'm so excited to have him. I celebrate him with you. Here is Conrad Bachmann. Hi,
Hello,
Conrad.
Kimberly. How are you?
Yay!
I'm excited to see you again. You know, I love you. You know that.
I love you, Conrad. So you're so active in the business. Tell me a little bit about how you began as an actor.
I came out in 1957 to LA, and I was a contract player at 20th Century Fox. Elizabeth Taylor was not doing real well with Cleopatra, and so they let everybody go at 20th Century Fox Studios. I was parking cars at Trader Vic's at night, and I was a beach guard during the day. This one guy would come in all the time and drove a little old Italian car. So one night I got his car and I pulled it up and he looked at me as he got ready to get into it. And he said, "Are you an actor?" I said, "Well, isn't everybody in LA an actor?" And he kind of looked at me, handed me his card. He said, "Call me tomorrow." So anyway, I put the card in my pocket. I got off work. I went home. I pulled the card out and I realized it was Bob, such and such name. He was the head of casting at 20th Century Fox Studios. So the next morning, I got up, I saw his card, I said, I'm going to call him. What have I got to lose? So I called him, and the secretary answered the phone, and she said, "And whom is calling?" I said, "It's tell Robert that it's the parking lot attendant from Trader Vic's." So, so she gets on the phone, and she said, "He'd like to know if you could come right over." So I thought, okay. So I drove over to 20th, and then I got there, and he said, "I'd like you to go into Fox Western Studios, which used to be the secondary lot for 20th Century Fox at Sunset and Western." So I went in there, and as I walked in the door, there were two guys sitting there across from each other typing. One guy looks up, he says, "Oh, yeah, you're fine. Go back and see Bob." So back I go to 20th. Anyway, I walk in, he's got a bunch of paperwork there. And he says, "Now we're just going to go one season. We're going to do that." I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. What are we talking about?" He said, "Well, we're going to take Dobie Gillis out of high school and put him in the Army, and you're going to be a badass MP." And that was my first series. That's how I started. That was it. And from there, it just
Wow, that was fantastic. What do you think the secret is to making it?
there is no secret. I mean, it's just being in the right place at the right time, but being prepared, having your feet on the ground, and knowing and being secure with yourself. You can't keep doubting yourself. You can't keep, saying, questioning yourself. You got to walk in there like you own the place. And one of the things I used to do, and you'll appreciate this, is when I had an audition, I would always love if I had the first line of the audition because I would walk in with that line. And so many times the casting director, as an example, let's say the first line might have been, "Did you guys go to Bobby's last weekend?" That might be the first line. So I would walk in, and instead of saying, "Hi, how are you? I'm Conrad Bachmann," they'd introduce themselves and they would say, "Anytime you're ready." I would just walk in the door and say, "Hi, did you go to Bobby's this weekend?" And a lot of times the casting director would go, oh, yeah, oh, that's the first line. I said, "Yeah, I thought we were here to audition." And so they would you mind starting again? "If you want me to, I will." "Okay. Did you go to Bobby's this weekend?" And we would go. So you sort of set up a rapport with the casting director. Make auditions fun.
I love it. So tell me one of your favorite gigs.
All of them, because they all paid. I never wanted to be a star. I just wanted to be a working actor, and I was always happy to get a job. My first commercial, in the early days, actors didn't do commercials. So anyway, the girl at the time that I was dating worked for a modeling agency, and she said, "There's a commercial that you're absolutely right for." And I said, "Well, I don't do commercials." She said, "Oh, I'm telling you, you're really right for this." So I went, okay. So I went in and I crashed the commercial, and I got the interviews. And in those days, they would bring everybody in, and then they would then go, "You stay, you stay, you stay, and the rest of you, thank you for coming in." And then you'd go in, you'd audition. Well, anyway, they would go in, you'd audition. Then they say, "Would you mind staying a little while longer?" "No." So you go out, next guy'd go in, He'd leave. Anyway, it kept going down to where all of a sudden there were two of us left in the room. The other guy goes in, he comes out and leaves. He says, "Congratulations." And I went, uh, "For what?" So the door burst open. Out they come. They go, "Congratulations, you're our guy." And I went, "Okay." So that was my first commercial. And I spent 2 days, 1961 Pontiac Tempest commercial, driving around with the top down with Linda Gray as my wife. I made so much money with those checks coming in and residuals. I said, "Guess who's doing commercials?" I started doing commercials, and I've done hundreds of commercials. Oh, I was spokesperson for American Airlines for about 5 years. I did American Express with Carl Malden. They broke that into like 4 or 5 spots. I did Volkswagen. They broke into 7 spots. That's when you only had CBS, NBC, and ABC. And so the residual checks would just come pouring in. And commercials actually sustained my career because the acting jobs were few and far between that you could get. So meanwhile, if you're running on commercials, changing clothes in your car or on the middle of Sunset Boulevard, I thought sometimes I'm going to get arrested. Half the time I was popping clothes off and changing. I had an audition for a Western, and I was in Western clothes with a gun and everything else. And then I had an audition for a wedding commercial, and I couldn't remember which one it was. And I remember I was dashing in, I was running late. You know how it is on Sunset. And so I was dashing into this interview, and I was in my Western outfit and everything else. And it was the one that I was supposed to be in the tuxedo for the wedding. And so they looked at me, and I looked at me, and I went, "Hey guys, I just came for another audition. I thought this was the one that was the Western." Anyway, so I had to dance with the bride, my daughter. So here's everybody else in tuxedos, and I'm in a Western, complete guns, everything, chaps, and I'm dancing with her, and I ended up getting the spot. It was very funny.
How funny and wonderful. What does preparation mean?
To me, it's just who am I? Uh, where do I buy my clothes? Where do I shop? It's finding out who the character is. Whenever I get a script or I get a role, something, I always try to figure out who is this guy? What kind of clothes is he? What does he drink? What kind of friends does he have? Who does he hang out with? Is he a funny guy? Does he tell jokes? Does he listen to jokes and laugh? Well, I mean, I just try to figure out who the character is, and I try to bring that character into the scene with the lines that I've been given. And one of the things that I learned, I auditioned years ago. You remember Nina Foch, of course. One
Mm-hmm.
of the things I learned from her, she reminded me that you're making an entrance, you're there for a reason, and you're leaving. So it's entering, there you are, and you're going. And what is that all about? And as you will know, acting is reacting. It's just like me reacting to you right now, or even in a conversation with anybody, reacting to what they're saying. Jimmy Cagney said it well. He said, "You enter the room, you plant your feet, you look the guy in the eye, and you tell the truth."
That's great. Both of us, I studied with Nina Foch as well, way back in the day, in the early 80s, when I was a young actor. Working with her was profound at the very beginning of my career. Tell me a little about your experiences with Nina.
You know, I had fallen in love with Nina as a kid watching movies. I just spotted her on the screen. And so when I had the opportunity I thought I better start studying since I'm working so much. Maybe I better find out what I'm doing. So I had the opportunity to audition for her, and I worked hard on the monologue of that George C. Scott did, the opening speech of General Patton. So I worked hard on it. And I remember the day I got there, I walked into the theater where she was teaching, and there she sat in this theater in a director's chair. And at first I just went, "My God, that's Nina Foch in person now." I always saw her on the screen. And so I stood there, and she said, "Well, anytime you're ready." She said, "Well, just step behind the curtain and whenever you're ready." So I got behind the curtain, and I was scared to death. And I thought, "God, what am I going to do?" And for some reason, I just bellowed out, "Attention!" And I walked out of the room, and I started the lines. And I got 1.5 lines out of my mouth. And she came out of her chair, and she said, "You're in my class." I looked at her, and I said, "You know how hard I worked on this monologue?" She said, I don't care, you're my class. So anyway, when class did start, I said to her, I said, I have to ask you, what was it that did it? I mean, I didn't even get to do the monologue, and you said I'm in the class. She said, you made an entrance. Actors forget to make an entrance. And she said, acting is making an entrance and being there for the reason you're there and leaving for wherever you're going. But you make an entrance, you're there, and you leave. And she said, you made an entrance and it impressed me. And I said, you're in my class. So I studied with her for about 3 years. I loved her. But I've
You
also
know,
been in your classes. I've also been in your classes. And I got to tell you, I still say this, I tell everybody this, I still think you're the number one top dog acting coach in Los Angeles.
thank you so much, Conrad. I really appreciate that endorsement tremendously. I want to tell
Well,
you
you
something.
are. You are.
Thank I want to throw in something about Nina Foch because what you said is so valid. And I teach entrances, obviously, because I trained with the greats, and one of them was Nina. And
Mhm.
what I love to say, to just even add to that, of what she would say is not only lead, but have somewhere to go and know where you're going and why you have to go, so that
Yeah.
your entrance is um, is influenced by that exit. It's
Mhm.
influenced by that need. So, and I love that she loved your entrance. I mean, that is key. And another thing I learned from Nina that I want to put out there is the change. Like if you're gonna get a phone call and you know it's going to be good news, don't feel so good at first, and so that you have a transition. Or if you're going to
Yeah.
get bad news, come in kind of feeling good, so that there's that opportunity for a transition,
I
so that
agree.
you can have those reactions. Set yourself up to react, but don't plan those reactions. And I think that's
Exactly.
so important, so important.
Well,
So
and then
I,
also you add the color to the scene. What is the scene about? And then you bring in your colors.
yep,
And those colors can change, you know. Um, I also worked with another person too, by the way, who you know is Sandy Meisner.
of
Uh,
course.
Sandy was before he went to the island. He was at 20th Century Fox, and we were in his class. One of the first thing they gave us that first night was a monologue, and you had to go outside and learn it. And I went, Phew. I mean, it went well, like in promulgating your esoteric cogitations or articulating your superficial sentimentalities. Beware of platitudinous ponderosity. And it went on and on and on and on. It was a bear to learn. That's the other thing, too. You got to be able to learn lines. I personally have a hard time with lines. I'll admit it. So I work extra hard. And I learned, I was doing my first series I had after Dobie Gillis was a series called The Rogues. I remember I was sitting in a makeup chair, and here's this kid from Kentucky. And sitting next to me is Charles Boyer. And I was so excited. I thought nobody in Kentucky is going to believe that I'm sitting in the same room with Charles Boyer, and I'm watching Gaslight as a kid. And then in comes David Niven, and then in came Gig Young. Meanwhile, in working with the show, Gig used to have a big box on his shoulder all the time. And I thought I was listening to the races. I thought maybe he was a big horse fanatic. So I said to him one day, I said, I got to ask you, what are you listening to all the time? He said, I can't learn lines. So he said, I tape them and then I play them all day and I memorize them. I get them in the car. I've got them at night. I've got them at the studio. So I started doing that and it really helped. I used to tape all my lines and then just run them all the time.
That's such great advice. I One of my directors had a pet peeve, and that was if anybody listens to an audio tape of their lines, they're going to be repeating a speech pattern. So he wouldn't let anybody record them. However, how you can record them is without the performance, just very flat, and then you can record them and learn them that way. And I think it's fine. I think it's great. And
Yeah.
anything you can do to learn your lines is crucial to overcoming that barrier or that block of getting them inside you. Images help too. Visualizing what you're saying helps you understand and deliver that line as well.
Once you've got all your lines down and then you get there, somebody changes the lines. And so you're handed a new breakdown. You're handed a new script, and then you have to, hustle to relearn those lines. Yeah, I hate that when it happens.
Oh, the changes, yeah.
Oh
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
those.
No, I had the lead in a show, and I worked so hard to get that down because the whole show was me. And I remember I was sitting in my dressing room and I heard a knock on the door. I opened the door. The director says, "Good morning, Conrad. How are you?" And everything else. Yeah, he says, "By the way," he says, we made some changes over the weekend. Here's the new script." And I looked at it, and it was like almost an 80% change. So I told him, I said, "Yeah, we just have to shoot scene for scene." And so that's what we did. I learned the scene. We went over and shot it. Went back over, learned the scene again, went over and shot it, and it worked out. I got that training on General Hospital in the early days when I was doing that, when they used to have all the boards and you did all your dialogue off boards, off camera. Today you have to memorize everything.
I had a very small recurring non-credited role on General Hospital way back in the day, but
Did you?
everybody knew over there.
They were fun. General Hospital was fun. I did Young and the Restless. I was an attorney on Young and the Restless. I was a doctor on General Hospital. Um, I've been a psychiatrist on what show was that? I think it was Y&R again. Years later, I was a psychiatrist, but I'm not a soap guy.
I'm not much of a soap actress, actually. I'm a director writer now for years and years and
Yeah.
years.
And you are fantastic. And, you mentioned Louisville's International Festival of Film earlier. And I have to tell everyone that you have had 3 films in the festival and you have won all 3 times. Uh, and the films were awesome. You are an awesome director, and I keep telling you, I'm waiting to work for you.
Oh, good,
Whatever
because
you do, I'm there.
oh, awesome. We will work together, Conrad. I will do another
Now you
film.
know my secrets, so just make the boards big. Well, I can't wait to work because, first of all, I think the world of you. You know that you're so down to earth. I've attended a lot of your classes, and I love the way you teach, and I love what you do.
Conrad, you're wonderful too. You're an incredible inspiration to so many people and have helped so many people in your festival. It's been such an honor to go.
I mean, we get people from all over the world, and all of the meeting rooms fill up, and they do have the opportunity. Foreigners from different parts of the world have a more opportunity to attend virtually than they do, although we do get a lot of people from around the world who attend the festival.
Speaking of celebrities and different actors that you've worked with and you love,
Rod Steiger, major thrill for me because I co-starred with Rod Steiger and Jack Palance in a film. Steiger was incredible. I remember we were shooting at a big mansion in Beverly Hills, and Steiger had his trailer, and I was sitting in a makeup chair, and all of a sudden the door of Steiger's wagon opens up, and out comes Steiger, and I'm going, my God, Rod Steiger. I mean, and he looks at me, and he just kept walking, and I thought, holy smokes, he's coming straight to me. And he came up to me, and he leaned over, put his hand out, and says, "I'm Rod Steiger. Good morning." And I went, I know who you are. I mean, Rod Steiger came up to me and introduced himself, but it was really funny. We did a scene. I played a killer, and had to go after Jack Palance, who was an artist hiding behind his artist work as a killer, as a hitman. And so he didn't do something that he was supposed to do. And so Steiger sends me out after him. So I get Palance, and I bring him back to this house. So I'm working off camera, and Steiger's at the end of the table. And he's eating, and we do the scene. And the director says, "Okay, cut, check the gate." And Steiger says, "Just a minute." And he gets up and he walks around up from the table and comes up that long table and comes up beside the camera. And he leans over my ear and he says, "What'd you think?" What did I think? I thought it was good. Yeah, it's good, Rod. So he says, "Okay, you can check the gate. We'll move on." And I thought, oh my God, Rod Steiger asked me what I just thought of that scene. I was so impressed I couldn't believe it. I
That
loved
is so
working with him.
empowering, Conrad. It's so heart opening that he gave you that,
I
nod
know.
of approval.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a
You know,
super guy to work with. He was, I mean, so down to earth, one of the nicest guys. And of course, I told him, I said, I hated your ass, Rod, in Dr. Zhivago. I said, because I just wanted to strangle you after you raped that poor girl, Julie Christie, in Dr. Zhivago. And he kind of laughed, you know. But it was kind of fun because I mean, that's my favorite movie is Dr. Zhivago. Dr. Zhivago and Executive Suite. And Executive Suite has Nina Foch, William Holden, Frederick March. I mean, I'm listing names that probably a lot of people won't remember, but what a cast. And it's just an awesome film. I love both those films. And I think they're both films for actors to look at. I really do, especially Executive Suite.
don't you think it's interesting, Conrad, that, as the years go by, certain people are so hot. They're so like huge as stars. And then the next round comes and it's different and they start to fade. And then we get new people that are huge
Yeah.
stars. And then they fade. And then we get a whole round of new stars. And then the young generation they're not aware of these huge, amazing talents like Rod Steiger or any of, and I went to UCLA and we had when I signed up and I loved appreciation of past features. And that's
Mhm.
where I was introduced to a lot of the major stars and got to study all of their films. And so it's so interesting how the rhythm and the season of our business shifts, changes, and evolves. And how do you feel about that?
Well, and I tell everybody, and they always laugh when I say this because it's happened twice, because I remember when the camera came in. But going back to films in the early, early days, like when I was at 20th and at MGM and Warner Brothers and all those various Disney, all the various studios, and it was the 35 millimeter, the old standard 35 millimeter camera, and when you had a close up, they would move the camera around over the other actor's shoulder, and they'd shoot your scenes. And then they'd have to pick that whole thing up, move that camera back around behind you, and shoot on the camera over your shoulder for their scenes. And then they'd have to move the camera way the hell out there to get that master shot. And then the editor would go to work. And then all of a sudden, television came in. And I can remember, I'm trying to remember some of the first TV shows, like working various Dick Powell shows at Four Star. Then the TV camera came in, and now all of a sudden you've got two and three cameras set up, and you're shooting scenes much quicker. You're getting, instead of getting four, maybe three or four scenes, really good scenes done for the day, now you're doing 10 or 12. Okay. Um, Although when I did stunt work too, by the way. I used to double and do the stunt work for Bing Crosby. I doubled him in the remake of Stagecoach. And that was the old 35 millimeter camera again, which was fun. It was like the old days. Major charge down a hill at the Stagecoach one day. It was really funny because Gordon Douglas was the director, and he was in a helicopter up in the sky with a big megaphone hollering, action. So we were standing on top of a ridge. The stagecoach is going down long below us, and we had to ride down this ridge screaming. And I'm got arrows, and I'm pulling arrows out of the back of my head, and I'm firing arrows, and I'm riding down the ridge. And we get down at the bottom of it, and Gordon says, "Cut." Well, everybody else stopped except the Indians. They kept right on. They were in full war paint. They kept riding down the hill, and they rode down to this next little town, which was having a Western Day celebration. Scared the bejesus out of everybody down there. They got off their horses, and they started charging $1 to have their picture taken with everybody. That was funny, kind of funny. I don't know how we got off on that one, but
That's very, very funny. But I just think it's wild that you have that kind of skill set to be able to ride a horse and to shoot off a horse and the arrows and the swords and all the things that you have to do on a horse when you're playing period acting.
well, I grew up in Kentucky on a big farm out in Valley Station, and we had a 65-acre farm out there. We all had horses, and That's all we had in my youth growing up was, we made stagecoaches, we had surreys, and we went riding for the weekends, and that's what we did.
Tell us about your dancing career. I know you were a very, very solid tapper. What else?
Yeah, I did. As I said, I'd go to movies with my mother, and I'd come home and I would put on some music, and I would go out in the garage and I'd just kind of tap around as much as I could. And so actually, my dad got me a huge sheet of plywood, and then my mother bought me some tap shoes. And I'd go to a musical with my mother, and I'd come home and I'd put on some music, and I would just tap. I mean, I didn't know how. So I would fake it as much as possible, but I'd learn how to tap and click and heel click and that make noise. One day we went downtown and we went to a movie called Good News with June Allison and Peter Lawford, Joan McCracken. Great musical. It's dated, but it's still a good musical. A lot of music stuff in it. And I came out of that theater and I said to my mother, I was a freshman in high school. I said, I know exactly what I want to do. What's that? I said, I want to be a dancer. Without hesitation, she went to a telephone booth, looked up Irma Flannery School of Dance, second floor of the National Theater building in Louisville, and I started studying dance. And in about, I don't know, about 4 months, she gave me a beginner's class. I started teaching beginners because I was accelerating so well. I picked it up so fast. And then I started studying, and I started taking ballet with another teacher. And just one door opened up to another. The Korean War broke out, and I received a draft notice. I went, I'm not going to the Army, so I ran down and joined the Air Force. And a good friend of mine that had sponsored me during high school, John Hillerick, who you've heard of the Louisville Slugger, was John Hillerick of the Hillerick family who owned the Louisville Slugger, was my sponsor. And I talked to him, and he knew the commanding general of the Air Force base up in Ohio, and he wrote him a letter suggesting that I get into special services. When I did join, I took that letter with me, went through basic training, and I became a bypass specialist, and went into special services immediately and began doing shows. Every year in the Air Force, they have a talent contest called Tops in Blue, and I won that every year in my category as a song and dance man. And then they put that show together. We would travel all over the world doing shows. And then they decided to ship a bunch of us, or a group of us together over to Okinawa. And we went over to Okinawa and we formed a show called Sky High. And from Okinawa, we then toured all through the Far East and Korea doing shows for the servicemen and the hospitals and NCO clubs and airmen clubs. And then even in Japan, we were able to book some private clubs and were making some extra money. So I don't know how I got off and all that. But anyway, it all started with me
That's
going to a movie.
fantastic. Conrad, my
Oh,
father was on Okinawa. I wonder if he saw you.
I was there from 53 to 55, 1953 to 1955.
Oh, I think he was before that. By then he was already working. Did you ever do theater? I don't think I've ever asked you this. Did you ever do
Oh,
theater?
yes. Oh, sure. I did a lot of musicals as a dancer. I mean, my God, I did tons of musicals. But the last theater piece I did, and then in college I did I mean, I had the leads and all the stuff at Best Man, Andersonville Trials, Phineas Rainbow. I did all that stuff in college. But the last theater piece I did was Enemy of the People.
This is a question I'm asked often, and I have two videos on this, on stage versus screen. But just for fun, I'd love to hear your take on the difference or what you do as an actor of stage versus screen.
You have to project differently on theater because, you've got to have the persons past that third row hear you. And there's a little more, I would say, gestures are a little broader in theater. But other than that, you're still doing the same thing. You're there for a reason, and whatever the reason is what you're doing. If you think about when you just have a conversation and you're someplace having a conversation with somebody or a group of people, relate that same sense of feeling to the acting experience in film. I mean, if you have a scene, it's no different than you sitting in an armchair having a conversation with somebody or reacting to something that might be happening around you. It's the exact same thing, and that's what you try to bring that.
The reality of what you were talking about is about intimacy, intimacy with who you're relating to. The intimacy of how and where you live in that character is real for you in your belief, and then intimacy with the person you're talking to.
When I was doing Macmillan and Wife with Rock Hudson, we could never get through a scene because he would laugh all the time. He was always laughing. And we would do 10, 12, 15 takes to get through a scene. I mean, sometimes you get through it, but most of the time, and then he would start laughing. And then I can remember I would start laughing, but guess who got their butt chewed out? Me, because the director said, Bach, did you hold it down? I said, well, he said, I don't care. You hold it down. And then Rock would look at me and go, it's your fault.
That's so funny. Rock Hudson, he couldn't keep his straight face. He couldn't get through a
Oh,
scene.
super nice guy. Oh, God, we used to go in between takes, we'd go to his trailer and sit there and play cards, and he'd tell me a story. He was a super down to earth, nice guy. That's the other thing too over there at Universal. Would be tour trams would come through. You'd be in the shooting, and all of a sudden the director would say cut. You had to wait for the tram to come through for all the people. And one day I remember we were in the trailer. I told Rock, I said, one of these days you got to stick your head out there, man. These people come through there, and this guy's making this announcement. Over here is stage 23. He's set for Macmillan and Wife, and that trailer over there is Rock Hudson's trailer. And blah, blah. I said, Rock, stick your head out there and say hello. Anyway, here comes the trailer coming by, and you hear the announcer talking about Macmillan and Wife stage and the trailer and everything. So Rock did it. Opens the door up and sticks his head out and says, hey, how y'all doing? And I'm telling you, I never saw so many people go crazy. Cameras went off, sounded like a room full of Geiger counters, but he did it. He was a super nice guy, very down to earth.
It's amazing how the world celebrates those who
Yeah,
move their heart.
yeah,
You know,
that's true. Yeah, when I was doing Tales of a Golden Monkey, my kids would go to the set with me over there, and they used to ride the tram. They used to ride the tram down through Universal, and then we'd have to stop shooting. And I remember one time both the kids were sitting in the front car of the tram, and they would say, "You see the guy in that sea captain's uniform over there? That's my dad." And of course, the cameras would go off then, but that was funny too. And then I remember another time, I forget what the show was, but I had a scene, I was playing a really heavy scene, and I had to argue and fight and everything else. And then I had to storm out and slam the door and then stop outside because the scene was still going on inside. And there was a big ladder sitting there, and I happened to notice the ladder. And I looked up, and there was my son sitting at the top of the ladder. And I looked up at him, and he goes, he was about 12 years old. My kids grew up on a lot at Universal.
I have a lot of actors watching right now. What's a good lesson that you think would be good for everyone to hear?
I think be as honest as you can with yourself. Are you wanting to be an actor because of publicity and because of the status, or you want to be an actor because that's something you love? You've got to love it. Um, and try not to be nervous. I mean, look, I mean, I'm always nervous myself, but then you settle in and you got to say, what am I here for? And the other thing too is, I think some of the advice I would give an actor, a young actor starting out, is don't try to be friendly with everybody on the set. Go in there, do your job, go back to your dressing room, and wait till they call you back out. Don't try to make friends and be anybody special to anybody, thinking you get more attention that way. Forget it. Just go in there and do your job and go home. Okay, stay professional as you can be, but know your craft and know your lines. Know your lines like you know your name. If you're getting ready to do a show, research the show, who's on the show, what do they do, what are their hobbies, that sort of thing. But I would always try to find out something about the director that I knew was going to be directing or the producer of the show so that I would have something that would give us commonness on the set that I could bring up if I had the chance to. when you break, everybody mixes and sits together. And usually the actors all sit together, the extras all go together, the leads all go together, the writers, the producers, stuff all to go together. But try to get yourself into a group where you can sit down and have a community. It's all so different. Every show is different. Although you're still acting, it's still different. It's different people, different personalities. What do you tell actors? You're the coach.
Oh my gosh, I have a whole channel of videos of what I tell actors that they can
Oh,
watch. By
okay.
the way, please do watch all my videos. And also, I have a book called Acting with Impact. Acting with Impact. I also have an app called Life Emotions. And here it is.
Oh,
Here's the deck of cards. I also have it on the iPhone, an app, and I'll be doing some videos, emotions, and developing your emotional range and knowing yourself.
I can remember when I was doing Highway to Heaven with Michael. We were in a gymnasium. We were both on a bike exercising, doing dialogue. All of a sudden, these mirrors opened up in front of me, and all these people came walking out, and I stopped. I thought, what the hell is this all about? Michael leaned over to me. He says, he says, no matter what interrupts the scene, never stop. Just keep going. Well, that was another little trick of the trade that I learned. So I've seen eruptions and abruptions and everything else, and you just keep doing it because a lot of times all that already works out in your favor.
One of the most important things is that you don't break character.
Never break character.
So if something's going on outside of camera, chances are it doesn't matter because the camera's rolling. Stay in character. Also, in any way, your fellow actor is dependent on you staying in character.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And a lot of times it works for the scene.
What actor influenced you the most or inspired you the most?
William Holden has always impressed me. I've never missed anything he's done. I've just loved his work. His naturalness. Everything was so natural. You absolutely believed everything he was doing. He was actually there doing what was supposed to be done. His close ups, his medium shots, his long shots. I mean, just everything about him was just so natural. And the other one that I guess was be a lot like that was Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman was a really supernatural actor. When you stop and think about the greats, I mean, you just look at them and you believe the scene that they're in. You're in that scene. I mean, when you go back to the old classics, I mean, Bogart, Cagney, all of those great actors.
You are so wonderful, Conrad. You've been a mentor to me and a support system that I've never had. It's been such a joy and pleasure having you in my life, and you are a blessing in my life, Conrad. Thank you so much. I want to thank you so much, Conrad, for being with us today. And I want to thank you for joining us and being with us today as we got to know Conrad Bachmann and a little bit about his career, his philosophy on the work. Thank you so much. Please like, please comment, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Take the journey.
Out by a Western water tank one cold November day, inside an empty boxcar, a dying hobo lay. His partner stood beside him with low and drooping head, listening to the last words the dying hobo said. I'm going to a better land where everything is bright, where handouts grow in bushes and you can sleep out every night, where little streams of whiskey come trickling down the rocks and you never ever have to wear your socks. So tell my girl in Denver, for her I'll never roam, 'cause I'm coming home. The hobo stopped, his head fell back, for he'd sung his last refrain. His partner took his hat and shoes, and he grabbed the eastbound train. That's my hobo story.
Take the journey, and please subscribe. Hi, I'm Kimberly Jentzen. Thank you for watching.